going on, guys? Welcome in. Welcome in. It's Friday Eve. Today's day wasn't so bad. At least we had a pretty nice trend day, I want to say. But that was a hell of a intraday reversal, to say the least. What's going on, Kevin? Your 450 call survived. I mean that was a hell of a reversal. I think you went through quite a bit of pain today for that entire recovery. So that was a hell of a move and hell of a dime in the hands on your part, I gotta say. What's going on, Ian? Today was pretty interesting day. I think everyone pretty much felt the vibe after the Feds from yesterday that we were gonna get some kind of, wouldn't say quote unquote, a little bit of a meltdown, and that's basically what we got today. But we ended up having such a flip. Intraday internals changed so much. It felt like there was so much, pretty much accumulation down at the bottom, and that was basically right when Sig actually came in on live, which was the timing when he came on live was just insanely crazy. I don't get how that ended up happening. He came in, he's like, I don't think I want to buy the bottom here, and that was literally the bottom when he came on live, which was pretty odd. So that was just an interesting part, but I don't think anyone expected that kind of rip trying to push towards 450 like that in that fashion and that quickly. So that was one thing, and then of course that led to that sporadic little profit taking into the end of the day because I don't think a lot of people want to pretty much be holding positions going into a Friday before a short week next week. So that made sense pretty much about the profit taking towards the end of the day. But that rip from the bottom, pretty much we nailed from what is this 443 half all the way up, literally 450 half. That was just an insanely crazy run. I don't think anybody could have predicted that. The only thing that actually was able to pretty much gauge and hopefully make you guys money off of that was basically the cloud alerts. So hopefully the Tesla alert, the Apple alert, hopefully kind of gave you guys some profits. I think those are things that those are all basically all technically speaking. It's not necessarily a flow based like our flow alerts. So that was all just pretty much technicals firing off with Tesla and Apple. And so hopefully you guys were able, I saw a few in chat, you were able to make a quick 10-15% off of that. And that's basically what you pretty much shoot for every day is making that quick 10-15%. So glad to see those of you that pretty much made bank off of that. That was definitely a good sign. Sids, what's going on? You got green by the end of the day. Strange. I think either some of us pretty much felt the pain by the end of the day, or you just had a great day. That's literally the bottom line. And it feels like with since the volatility start to kick in, that's really what we're looking at. What actually concerns me about today's price action, and this is where my concern pretty much lies, obviously, is that I pretty much wanted today. Obviously, I wanted us to pretty much go down towards 442. I wanted to see us actually tap my anchored VWAP that I basically had dating from our highs of January 4th, and I think I mentioned that yesterday as well. We didn't quite get there, but what we basically did is we pretty much looked like we kind of double bottomed here, right at this anchor here at that 443 half. Off of yesterday's low, we basically held that low, and that's what we ripped off of was me from yesterday's low. So that was definitely the positive sign out of that. The only thing that I've taken away though, since we really had what I would want to say is all this volatility, is that what we've noticed is that all the rips tend to get shorted since we basically made a U-turn here from March 29th. That's what my concern is going into tomorrow, especially with that profit taking into the end of the day. What's going on, Wiley? That's my concern tomorrow going into the day. Obviously, the flow is there to support the buyers going into tomorrow, but my concern is, and I think Sig also mentioned it in his chat as well, is that the risk reward is favoring the downside, not necessarily the upside. Granted, the fact that you had a near $5 rip on SPY. So what's typically been happening right now since we had that U-turn on March 29th at the top there is that all the pretty much all the rips are getting shorted. And that's what my concern is tomorrow is that this rip is going to get shorted going into tomorrow. I also saw the 10-year bond yield pretty much continuing to go up with this spike towards the end of the day. So that was a little bit more of a red flag for me as well. Nonetheless, what could end up potentially happening is that we basically end up having a nice gap up that'll likely pretty much put your cloud alerts, your Tesla alert, your Apple alert basically at their target prices. And then we kind of see a little bit of a slow bleed tomorrow. That's basically what my takeaway is after seeing such sporadic price action into the end of the day. And then the fact of what the trend has been is just shorting all the rips rather than buying the dip so consistently and selling the rip. you're basically shorting the rip and you're pretty much selling at the bottoms, basically. That's pretty much what my big takeaway is from today. But it was definitely a hell of a move intraday, to say the least. All right. As far as what I basically look for is that I would look to see if we get up towards 452. That's the level I'm going to look to see. Maybe we get a gap up as high, close enough to that 452, and I'll look to see if we potentially short it. Granted, the fact that we've already had such an insane rally, but that'll all be contingent upon whether we have a solid gap up tomorrow, or if the market gives us like a dip and rip, and we get potentially we get a dip down towards about this 445, and then we could potentially get just smooth sailing towards that 452. That would be another ideal scenario, but it's going to be contingent upon whether we gap up or we get a dip before the opening bell. All right. So that's what I'm pretty much going to be looking for. Otherwise, if bigger thing is that obviously we're risking losing that low from yesterday today at that 443 half, and I'm still looking at my anchor view up at that 442.72 mark, and we risk pretty much breaking down towards 441. I think Avery was also watching towards 440 as well. Was that bigger psych level that he wanted to see as well. So that's pretty much what I'll look for that. Let me get into some of the tickers that you guys wanted to look at real quick because I know that Sig and Dap are going to start the class. So I can pretty much get covered on what you guys want to look at. CCJ, what a rip this was. I know that you had me look at this yesterday, Wiley. What a move. I believe also Avery pretty much name dropped it. That was just a hell of a move that you got. He actually called out your entry point that you really wanted. That was just a hell of a move. So I like this one. You basically got your move over your ascending triangle. That's basically what you want to see. Was that move over that $30 mark? That was exactly what you got. You had that beautiful 4 hour candle just push right through it. And here was the solid sign is that you didn't just get a wick over and see it just pretty much sell right back off. You had the beautiful candle pretty much hold and open right above it. So that was a solid sign. I do believe that this is pretty much your all-time high, if I'm not mistaken, on this. Is it? Yeah, this is your all-time high. So you're sitting pretty high up there. In terms of level of what I would basically be looking at for this, in terms of maybe your further upside on this, is that your next level that you're pretty much watching here. One quick second. Why? Okay. All right. So yeah, your 52-week high, you're basically sitting at right now is you're looking at that 30.97 level. Above that, what's gonna end up happening is that you're basically looking at your RSI pretty much at that point in terms is that you're pretty much gonna be hitting your RSI is gonna be setting into overbought territory at 3107. And above 3107, if I can actually see if there's any kind of trendline resistance that you're looking at, that'll probably be the next thing that I want to watch. Let's see if we can actually look to see if there's any kind of trendline resistance that you're watching right now. And I likely can't go off of bodies of the candles here. See if there's anything in particular that stands out in this. So I do think that you're going to run into just a little bit of resistance here. You're likely going to be seeing some resistance right around 31.5 is basically where you're going to hit some resistance. That 31.5 is just above where I said that overbought territory was, about at 31 mark. So, but 31.5 would be that spot where I would say look to take some profits, and then you're going to look for that retest of that breakout spot because again, you're going to have to reconfirm that breakout spot. You're going to retest it as support at that $30 mark, and then you load it up and you'll continue to grind higher. But if you break this rising wedge, that's going to be quite interesting. And I've seen it before. I think I called it out on the Costco one. So that'll be an interesting part. But I think you look to take your profits at that 31 half. You look for the retest at the $30 mark. And that's where you look to reload up on that, Wiley. So I think that's probably the best gauge I can tell you. But other than that, if you're holding multiple contracts, you look to sell each one on the way up after you hit certain milestones, whether it be 40% up, 50% up. You look to take your profits as you go up. All right. But that's pretty much what I would say about that one. Someone did mention AMD. This one's just been a tough one to gauge. I'm not gonna lie. AMD has just been such a tough one to really look at. And I'm gonna take up my clouds real quick. This one's been so much in like in the gutter. That's really what it feels like with AMD right now. I was pretty much presuming that we would get a more solid bounce off of the price action we had intraday here today. That was not very convincing right now off of that price action we had today. So it left me with a little bit of a pause to concern that this is going to continue to pretty much chop right here within this zone of 106 down to this one, pretty much just 100 flat. That's basically your chop zone that you're looking at right now in terms of this. So above, once you get over that 106 mark, then we can start talking about potential real breakout right now. But if you can't break out that 106 mark, that's a tough spot right now. That's really looks like it's hindering it right now, in which you're just gonna trade within a range between 100 to 106. That's what I really fear about that, Jared, right now. You get over 106, then I think that's the point where you try to go long and you look to take your profits, of course, quick and consistently, basically, right? But if you can't break over that 106 mark, it's going to be a tough going right now, trying to scrape nails and pinch pennies off of this one, which I think there are better opportunities elsewhere. All right. So, and particularly, I think NVIDIA actually has a better chart looking than AMD right now. If you actually looked at NVIDIA pretty much off of basically your daily right now, you basically pretty much just smacked a trend line support off of the daily here, in which you're basically kind of looking like a little rising wedge action here. But if once you actually heard Dapper mention NVIDIA this morning, around lunchtime, that actually caught my attention because it actually wicked right off of my trendline support at that point in time. So that's what that one ended up catching my attention, and I was pretty much looking and engaging to get over that 240 mark, and we actually hit a high today. What I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I think she went for like 242. No, she actually went for the 245. So I got in early on that one, and I took about 10% profit off of that once Dapper called it out. But that was just another one that I think it has a little bit more upside. Obviously, it's a little rising wedgie, but I think we can go to test the gap fill here at that 252 mark, 253, and before we potentially see a larger scale breakdown off of this rising wedge. But I think the risk reward is a lot more better for NVIDIA rather than the range that AMD is pretty much just chopping within. All right. So hopefully that gives you a better idea there. The other one was Netflix that you mentioned. This is another one been in pretty much in the gutter right now. It hasn't really been able to do anything as of late. It actually pretty much broke down on my trendline support here off of this little megaphone action in which we wicked down below it. So I'm gonna look to see if we can pretty much get price action back over this 366 mark. That's when it's gonna start to pretty much get my attention back to the upside, in which we reclaim within this megaphone. But if we can't get over 366 half here, then we pretty much risk coming right back down, and I think we can come down as low as 350 flat here on this one. So that's part where I'm a little bit more of a concern as well on Netflix. This is another one that it's been in the gutter basically with like AMD. So 366 is that big psych level here. We get over that 366, then we can start talking about this gap fill that we have over the 376 mark, in which we'll like to see some momentum build off of that. But if you basically get under this 360 mark, if we crack under 360 here tomorrow, I think you could put it at 350 rather convincingly on Netflix. All right. Other one you mentioned was OJ. Hopefully you caught my AMD on that one. And then Microsoft. Let's take a peek at Microsoft. Microsoft kind of looks a little bit like how Apple looks. And this one is basically you're getting this little short-term bounce off of the gap down that we had from yesterday. Obviously, you see that we basically had that intraday bottom like we had with SPY and with Apple. But that goes back to piggybacking off of my statement of what I said pretty much to start off the live here is that a lot of these pretty much these pops, these rips are basically getting pretty much just sold. And that's what my concern is for Microsoft here. I did see calls going out towards 305. We basically got up towards 303.65. And so that's what gives me a little bit of a maybe a little bit of a concern tomorrow that we could potentially gap up tomorrow. And that's going to lead to that sporadic sell off intraday tomorrow, which we basically have what you would say is your quote unquote slow bleed tomorrow. But that 305 mark is that big psych level. Other than that, if we get over 305, I'm looking at 306. That'll be the next level, that 305, 306. And then you have that potential gap fill at that 307, which I do not expect to get even close to tomorrow. So 305 would be honestly be my top in which I would look to short Microsoft if I'm being honest with you. I would rather short that tomorrow morning, and I'll take that back down in the sense that a lot of these rips are basically just getting sold off. And that's what I'm going to look for in terms of Microsoft. Obviously, it had that relative strength today with this sell off that we had from early on. So that was a positive sign. So we saw how it pretty much just ripped off of pretty much trying to go from red to green intraday here. And that was a solid sign. But 305 would be my top tomorrow, in which I'll potentially look to see if I short it there. Or if we end up getting a nice little dip, you pretty much buy the dip and you take that right up to 305. All right. So hopefully that ends up helping. Of course, again, those of you that didn't hear me say, the Apple and Tesla alert, those are pretty much quick money, 10, 15% off of that. That was just a beautiful one. So hopefully you guys were able to catch that. So they should end up getting continuation. I don't think any of the two pretty much hit their target prices. So that should see some beautiful continuation. Apple should end up getting close enough to about 175 half in order to complete that $3 target. And then Tesla, it fired at, I believe, 1057. So you're looking about, if I remember what the average price was, I think it was about $14 to $15 in terms of your target. So definitely that one's, we'll be looking at that one tomorrow morning. We'll see what it ends up looking like. But what did I actually have pretty much for Tesla? I don't even remember if I look back at it, but pretty much I had a little ascending broadening wedge action going on. I was expecting the retest rather earlier on. We pretty much felt short of it, that 1076 half level. We basically pretty much just dropped right off of it. We held, we basically created a little bit of a megaphone action. So we could end up going as high as that 1086, retest the resistance of that megaphone that was prior support. And then we'll likely see this start to melt going into next week, in which we'll talk about that gap fill towards the bottom at that 10-11 mark. So that's another one. We'll keep an eye on it tomorrow. But bigger picture, I don't think that the cloud alert has actually paid out just yet in terms of the overall price target as well as Apple. All right. But that kind of wraps it up today, guys. I know that class is about to start here shortly. So go ahead and join into Sig and Dapper. Let's see what they got to talk about today. I know they pretty much postponed the spread talk for the debit spreads, called credit spreads. So we'll see what they have in tune for us today. But other than that, appreciate you guys joining in. Drop a like. But I'm out. Later, guys.